Hi, and welcome to Untethered with Jen Liss, the podcast that's here to help you break free, be you, and unleash your inner brilliance. I'm your host, Jen, and in this episode, we are going to talk about breathwork. Let's dive in. Hey there, unicorn. It's Jen. Today's episode is a total breathwork Q&A. I reached out onto social media and I said, hey, what do you want to know about breathwork? Because I know there's so many questions. I myself had no idea what the heck breathwork it was before it found me. And I know that within certain circles, a lot of people have heard things about it. Maybe some people have tried it. Maybe you've heard nothing about it. Maybe, like me, you hear the word work in it and you're like, heck no, not interested, will not go. So I just want to share my thoughts, my perspective, and research as well to answer some of your biggest and boldest questions about breathwork. So that's what we're going to do here in today's episode. And then on Thursday, I'm going to thread out a few little extra things that we will talk about as well. So hope you're excited for it. I'm looking forward to sharing all of the goodness about breathwork with you here in this episode. First, though, I thought, let's go out of order. Usually on Thursday thread episodes, I offer some thoughts and then we do a little bit of breath at the end. But here in today's episode, let's begin with some breath, and then we'll go into the Q&A so you can experience the breath with me, and then we will dive into what exactly we're doing here and why we're doing it. If you're driving, you can do breath work while you're driving, but just keep your awareness on the road, on the area around you, or choose to pause this episode or fast forward and come back to the breath part afterward. However, I do want you to know that it is okay to move and do breath work as long as you're doing just a few moments of breath work, because I'm not here physically present with you. We keep these breath work sessions that I do on the podcast incredibly simple and incredibly short because I'm not available to be there and witnessing you and all of that. So we will do a quick breathwork practice here. So if you would like to get comfortable and relax in the seat that you are in, sitting back in your chair, maybe taking a couple of deep cleansing breaths into your nose, out through the mouth, into the nose, and out through the mouth, closing down your eyes if you haven't yet, and just returning to your natural breath for a few moments, just allowing your body to breathe itself. As your body breathes itself, bringing your awareness to the breath, maybe noticing the cool air as it flows into your nose and the warm air as it flows out. Keeping that focused attention on the breath while simultaneously noticing the sensation of the chair or the ground, the surface beneath you. Just bringing your awareness to that surface beneath you and seeing if with a deep inhale, on the exhale, allowing yourself to sink into that surface just a little bit more. And now with your breath, taking 2 inhales in through the nose and 2 exhales out through the mouth, you can begin what is called a pulse breath. Continuing with that pulse breath, 2 inhales in through the nose, 2 exhales out through the mouth. And as you do so, on the exhales, inviting every muscle and every fiber in your body to relax, to release, down into that chair just a little bit more. That's it. That's it. Just continuing with that pulse breath for a few rotations longer. And when you're ready, on an exhale, exhaling all the breath through the mouth, holding briefly at the bottom before returning back to your natural breath. Once more, noticing that chair beneath you. Maybe placing a hand on your heart and just thanking yourself for taking these few moments of breath to bring your attention into the body, out of the swirl of the emotions, the busyness of the mind. Just say thank you. When you're ready, taking a deep inhale in. On your exhale, opening your eyes back up if you had your eyes closed, and just fully returning back into the here and now, into the present. So that felt like a perfect way to begin a discussion about breath work and what the heck it is and why maybe you should do it. And I will also talk about the pattern that we chose today and why we might choose one pattern over the other. That was one of the questions that was submitted. So first of all, I loved that Myra added this question into the mix. Why does the word work need to be part of it? Why didn't they consider breath dance? And I love this. As I mentioned, I'm not a fan of certain words. I think we hold a lot of connotations with certain words, and work is one of those words that tends to have a negative connotation placed on it. And so I love the idea of calling it breath dance. Maybe that's what we should call it. Breath sparkles, breath magic, breath dance. I like the perfect question to begin this conversation with. Our second question, which I'm going to personally add to the mix, what is breath work? What the heck is it? And breath work is simply using the breath to regulate the way that one breathes. And we do this in order to promote mental, emotional, and physical health. So the way that I use breathwork as a breath worker is to help people to use their breath to shift their state, to shift the state of your body. It shifts the state of your blood as you bring in more oxygen and as you release more CO2. As you shift the breath, it actually changes the physical state of your body, which allows you to change the state of your nervous system. You can move out of the sympathetic, which is your fight, flight, freeze, and into the parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest, simply using your breath. So the second question that we have is, why would I use it? I guess this is technically the third question. You would use breathwork in order to help you shift out of stress and anxiety. You can gain relief. You might have felt it if you were feeling a little stressful today. Simply moving yourself into an intentional breath can help you to shift your state. Simply taking a couple of deep breaths and noticing that surface beneath you, noticing how held you are, can help you to relax. And we'll talk about why. It can help you to reconnect to your intuition. This is one of the main things that I do with my clients, is to help us reconnect to our intuition by using the breath to reconnect back to our emotions. A lot of us do not feel comfortable feeling our emotions. We have blocked it. We have blocked the pain body. We are not feeling our emotions to the greatest capacity that we could be. And we have a lot of hard emotions to face when we do. And so that's why, as a trauma-informed breathwork practitioner, I help people to safely come back in and feel some of those emotions that might be existing there in your body, to witness them without judgment. But why we want to reconnect to our intuition is why we want to use breath work in order to reconnect to our intuition is because your intuition speaks to you in feelings, in sensations. That's how it speaks to you. It speaks to you through your gut, through your heart, through your muscles. So breath work is a beautiful way to do that. Breath work can help you to deepen your relationship to your body. Lots of reasons that you might want to do this. It can help you gain energy and mental clarity. People who struggle with clarity, there are a lot of ways in which breath work can support you in feeling more clear. And this is partially by allowing yourself to witness that which is happening within your body, within your emotional body. It can also support in trauma release. So there are lots of different things that you can use breath work for. I myself, again, as a coach, I help people to accomplish their dreams, to do the thing that they desire to do, whether that's to write a book or start a podcast or expand your foundation or to, find the man of your dreams, whatever that thing is that you're really wanting to usher into your life. I help you to do that through reconnecting back to your intuition. And we partially do that through the breath, reconnecting the mind and the body back together using the tool of breath work. So another question that had been asked was patterns. And that's why in today's breath practice, I introduced what is called the pulse breath pattern. Now, I abide by the training that I received was in pause breath work. We have certain names for the breath work that I do, and this breath is called the pulse breath. You might hear other modalities out there who use a similar pattern of 2 in, 2 out, 3 in, 3 out. They might call it something different. This is what I call it, but there are many other patterns of breath that you can use. So sometimes we use the simple, what is called halo active, into the nose and out through the mouth. There are other breath patterns where you will breathe all entirely through the mouth. There's one where we call triactive, where you go belly, chest, and out through the mouth. So it's a 3-part breath. There are all of these different breath patterns that you can do, and there's reasons for doing each of them. The pulse breath is an amazing breath for really getting out of your mind and coming solely into the focus on the breath. When you are counting is also a really great way to get out of your mind. You might have heard this before. Runners often will count to 30, run for 30 seconds, and then walk for 30 seconds and count that out because it helps you to get out of the mind and back into the present moment. So when we do the pulse breath, it's like a double whammy. You're counting and you're also focused on the breath and also manipulating the breath. So it helps you really fully come into the present moment. Super powerful breath for that reason. However, mouth breathing is incredibly activating. So you might use a mouth breath in order to initiate significant release because it will activate your kind of a little bit more of your stress system. It will activate your sympathetic nervous system. So we will sometimes use an active breath to heighten that nervous system. And then we will come into a nice soft breath, maybe a longer exhale, maybe nose breathing activates what is called the parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest. So we might use a nose breath at the end of that very active mouth breathing in order to help bring you back down and shift out of a more activated breath and more into a nice, calming, relaxed feeling. And the reason that we might do that is to help you to safely come into some emotions that maybe your guard was too high around. So we can use that active breath to kind of activate some of those emotions, and then we'll activate that parasympathetic to help you come back down into the present and be present with those emotions, inviting a non-judgmental view. There's so much to share, y'all. I got so much to share with you about breathwork. I hope that helps you to understand why you might choose one pattern over another. Now, I shared a little bit about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic, which are two sides of your autonomic nervous system. And this takes us to Kristen's question. She asked, I'd love to know about the brain and nervous system changes as a result of doing breath work consistently. This is a very big conversation, but I'm going to drill it down to the really important key points about breath work and how it can support your nervous system health. So here's something that is so fascinating about the breath. All parts of your body, for the most part, the functions of your body, a lot of them are automatic. Your heart simply beats. Your eyelashes simply grow. Your mouth salivates when it sees a piece of chicken or a fresh, ripe berry. You don't control that. You don't say, mouth, please salivate now. Now, maybe if you have very strong mind connection, you might be able to get it to salivate on demand like that, but it's much more likely to happen automatically when you see a, hot fudge sundae, right? Those things just happen. What is so cool and interesting about the breath is that it is both voluntary and involuntary. So you can control your breath. It automatically also happens. You are breathing all the time. From the time that you are born until your very last moment on this planet, you are breathing. We are all breathing all the time. But what you can do with your breath, you can shift it. You can change it. And as you breathe in more oxygen, longer, deeper inhales, and as you exhale more or less oxygen using big open-mouthed exhales or a long lingering exhale through the nose that might be a little bit more gentle, you can shift the amount of oxygen and carbon dioxide in your blood. And as you can imagine, we know that oxygen and CO2 are incredibly important. It really changes the state of your body. It changes the drugs that your body is carrying to your brain. So deep breathing actually decreases the overactivation of the amygdala part of your brain. This lowers stress hormones like epinephrine and cortisol that are pushed into your body by your sympathetic fight, flight, freeze nervous system. So when you are activated in the sympathetic, your body is getting those stress hormones. By taking a nice, deep, intentional breath, you can create a nice, relaxed, positive outcome within your body that actually has less of those stress hormones. Another thing that active, intentional breath does is that it activates the neocortex part of your brain. So the amygdala is less activated. The amygdala is the part of your brain that gets activated when you are stressed or afraid. And a lot of us, notifications on your phone, checking your email, getting alerts, feeling like you have too much to do. All of those things are stressors that put you in a fear state that activate your amygdala. So using breath work, becoming present using your breath helps to activate the neocortex. These things can be incredibly supportive to your nervous system because we spend so much time in our sympathetic and we don't spend enough time, generally speaking, in our rest and digest parasympathetic. Look at how many people have digestive issues in this world. We are so stressed. We're so tightened up like a little ball in our sympathetic, and we aren't resting and digesting over in the parasympathetic. So I'm going to dive in just a little bit more for you about something that's really important that breathwork helps you to do. There is something called the window of tolerance. This concept was originally developed by a doctor named Dr. Dan Siegel. You may or may not have heard of him, but the window of tolerance describes the optimal zone of arousal for a person to be in to function in everyday life. Now, everybody has their own individual window of tolerance. And when you are operating within your window of tolerance or your zone of optimal arousal, you're able to effectively manage and cope with your emotions. So we generally would love to be within our window of tolerance, but people who have experienced trauma, it is really difficult to regulate their emotions because your zone of arousal or your window of tolerance is incredibly narrow. We call this rigid. We call this a rigid nervous system when that window is super, super narrow. So what happens when you have a narrow window of tolerance? Well, it does not take much for you to get flipped over into your sympathetic and for everything to tense and tighten up, all those stress hormones to be released. And then maybe you come back out of it, but that window is so small that it just takes another little tiny trigger for it to move over again. And you keep spending so much time with your sympathetic activated. You get pushed essentially out of your window of tolerance, and seemingly just even like minor stressors can cause this. It puts you into a state of hyper arousal. It can also put you into a state of hypo arousal, which is where you spend too much time in freeze. So it's like you're either hyper stressed or you're frozen. And so this can cause dysregulation within your nervous system. Now, something that breathwork can help you to support is to disrupt your pattern of dysregulation. Again, if we come back to the breath and how we can control the breath, you can intentionally increase or lower your arousal levels, which can help you to self-regulate your way back into your window of tolerance. That can prevent any further dysregulation. Now, there are other things that I can go deeper into, and especially on expanding your window of tolerance and helping you to actually become more flexible and less rigid. There are things that we do in terms of trauma release and allowing ourselves to experience our emotions, allowing ourselves to release old patterns that can help you to widen that window of tolerance. But as a general rule, this is the basis of why breathwork can be so supportive, because you can intentionally bring yourself back into your window of tolerance when you find yourself dysregulated. And the stronger you get at this, it's like doing muscle reps. So when you can do it while being held in the safety of a facilitator, even just having the safety of a facilitator there, allowing you to both activate your sympathetic nervous system and then move into activating your parasympathetic nervous system. So again, we can activate with a breath like mouth breathing, can activate the sympathetic. And then we can use our long nose breaths to activate the parasympathetic, allowing ourselves to feel down into our bodies. We can do that with the safety of a facilitator being there with us. And often that is a missing link, is feeling safe. I feel safe to toggle between my sympathetic and my parasympathetic. So that's why it can be really supportive to actually have a physical person present with you, kind of like therapy. It's like I can think all of these thoughts, but when somebody else is there with me, I feel safe. So safety is incredibly important with this work. Especially if you're doing the deep work, it really is important to have always safety is the priority for me as a facilitator, is to make sure that I'm holding that space of safety for you. So Andrea asked, what would you say is the most noticeable change when you do breath work? And I think this differs for every person and why you might be coming to breath work. But the biggest thing that I think is the most noticeable change is awareness and then less stress. The less stress is because of the heightened awareness, because you realize more quickly when you are in a state of stress, when something is bothering you, you become heightened in awareness to your actual emotions. And then what I love to do is actually walk it back into the thought that led to the emotion, because it is our thoughts that create our emotions. So that is what I see as the most noticeable change, is people identifying things that previously they did not have awareness of. And that happens because of self-presence that we are able to experience, which I'm going to get into with our next question. Self-presence that breathwork helps us to achieve. So the next question is, how does breathwork pair with meditation? Thank you for this question, Doc. It's such a great question. Essentially, they do very similar things in some ways. If we ignore the nervous system regulation side of things, which actually meditation can help you also to regulate your nervous system, so they're also very similar in that way. What breathwork helps you to do is essentially what meditation helps you to do, which is to become present in the now with yourself. And we can take this as deep as you might want to go in terms of spirituality and really getting present with not just this moment, but what you are and existence and the light being and all of those things that you are in this moment. But that is the same thing. What breathwork helps you get to is the same thing as what meditation helps you get to, is the same thing as what prayer helps you get to. All of these things essentially help you to accept and be what is in the present, without judgment and in love. So that is my goal as a breathworker, is to help people get more and more to that state, because we are living our lives in a state of fear, which is causing all of the stress and all of these challenges. When we can get back to love, which is our natural state, which is what meditation also helps us to get to, then that is where transformation is truly possible. So they are similar in many, many ways. What breathwork also helps you to do is to become present with the actual sensations in your body. How often do you really allow yourself to feel the sensations that are existing within your body? A lot of times we're just focused on numbing out the sensations, right? You take an Advil to get rid of a headache, to get rid of a muscle cramp. So often we are just numbing and dulling and not actually allowing ourselves to feel that which is present in our bodies. And we have so many pain memories that exist. And they are guiding our everyday behaviors, these memories that we hold in our muscles, in our hearts, in our physical being. We are holding on to pain. And so with breath work, what a breathwork facilitator will help you to do is allow yourself to let go of the mind, let go of all the protection mechanisms that the mind has basically booby trapped you to keep you from feeling present with your actual sensations in your body, because they feel scary and they're painful. And so we try to avoid them. The mind does this to protect you. But when you do breath work, it releases the protection mechanisms of the mind so that you can become present with those physical sensations in your body. And as you become present with the pain sensations in your body, they tend to release. They tend to let go, because all that pain wants to do is signal something to you. And so you notice the signals. You might notice that that signal is actually attached to a memory, to a thought. And as you notice that that signal, that pain signal, is attached to a thought, you can question that thought. You can be curious about that thought. You can be like, why is it that I believe that by speaking out loud, by speaking my truth, I am going to hurt my family? This is a common one. Why is it that I believe that when I make money and when I become wealthy and when I achieve all of the things that I desire, my friends are going to think I'm a terrible person? Like, these are some of the thoughts that are held in emotional patterns in our bodies that you might not be aware of. But breathwork can help you to gain judgment-free awareness, to allow yourself to feel it. And then as you feel it, it traces back to a memory. So it's kind of like a little puzzle sometimes that we're solving. And that is a lot of the work that I do. There's other reasons to do breath work, but when we talk in terms of breath work and meditation, this is what I personally believe. By following a trauma-informed methodology, I'm helping people to become present with sensations, present with their essence, which is light, which is what you truly are, feeling the oneness, feeling the wholeness, feeling that all of those things that you desire in life, the freedom, the love, the joy, the beauty, the money, all of those things that you really desire to have and to experience already exist within you right now because you are whole and you are light and you are joy and you are magic. When we can feel that, when you can feel that essence really deep within you, that's where true transformation takes place. So breathwork holds space for that to occur. Another question that was asked was, I get really lightheaded sometimes and have to return to normal breathing while I'm doing breathwork. Is that a normal? And what can I do to avoid it? First of all, yes, it's normal. It is normal. Again, you are shifting the state of your body, of your blood, of the actual essence that helps your body to thrive and to live, that oxygen, that CO2. CO2 actually carries beautiful drugs through your body. You need to have a certain level of CO2. So as you do breath work, that changes. And that's a lot sometimes for your body to handle. So yes, please, if you become lightheaded during breath work, go back to your natural breath. There is nothing wrong with that. You are never wimping out by going back to your natural breath. If that's supportive to your body, it's so good. And if certain breaths don't make you feel great, I know that there are some people who the intense breaths, like that triactive one that I talked about, where you go belly, chest, and out, that can be a lot. It can create a lot of movement energetically. We're not going to get super into energetics today because nobody asked a question about it, first of all, but also because I know we're covering a lot of ground in this episode. But as you begin to move all of that through your body, and if you have some kind of emotional trigger or some kind of trauma response, it can cause you to feel lightheaded. So as that pH of the blood shifts, it can cause you to feel lightheaded. So I do not suggest that anyone ever push yourself through and breathe through something. There are other people, however, who might think differently. There are different methodologies within the breathwork practice. Mine is definitely through a trauma-informed lens, where I would always prefer that people take things in small sips, what we call in the breathwork world titration. We want you to titrate. Allow yourself to slowly move through. That is where real lasting transformation through my lens is possible, is when we allow ourselves to titrate with any experience. That comes to facing any kind of fear. We don't always have to be making giant leaps. We can simply be taking small sips at a time so as not to re-traumatize things. So if you become lightheaded, there's normal physiological reasons for that. And it can also be for a range of other emotional reasons as well. So one thing that you can become aware of, though, is if you regularly experience lightheadedness, get curious about it. Be like, does it seem like I'm always thinking a certain thought when that happens? Does some physical sensation come into my body when that happens? We can start to become a little bit curious, again, without judgment, just like, that's interesting that happened again at like the 5-minute mark. And we can just start to notice those things. And it might mean something, or there might be no belief or thought or any meaning behind it. It might simply just be the pH of your blood. So always inviting a sense of curiosity first and foremost. So I hope that's supportive in answering that question about lightheadedness, because we can, as we engage with some of these breaths, it can feel weird. It can feel a little bit scary. And part of the reason it can feel scary is because you are indeed activating with some of the breaths your sympathetic nervous system. And so you're activating the fight, flight, freeze with a really active breath. And that can be okay. Because again, maybe we're intentionally kind of tapping on the edges of that window of tolerance. And over time, with practicing breath work, you can begin to make it more flexible and to expand your window so it's wider and maybe not so tight and so rigid. You can become more flexible. I love to describe it, and I might have described it on the podcast this way, that it's like in the movie Step Brothers, where they have two beds in a room and one of them has the idea to make it into bunk beds. And once they make it into bunk beds, they're like, we have so much room for activities. I feel like that's your nervous system when you become more flexible and when your window of tolerance gets a little bit bigger. And that can happen through breath work by identifying triggers. That can help it by doing some emotional releases. It can happen by walking some of those emotional moments back to a thought and then shifting that thought into a more positive thought, because a lot of the emotional pain that we have in our body is created by a negative thought that you've had. Like, I am bad. I'm not enough. I'm not valued. I'm a terrible person. These kinds of thoughts exist in our subconscious mind, and we often don't realize that they are manifesting in our physical body, in your actual body, due to an emotion. It's then manifesting as pain, as a sensation, as a tightness, as a little jaw clench. People don't notice sometimes muscle twitches while they're doing breath work, and that can actually be an emotional pattern that you were holding in your body. Okay, Lisa asked, several years ago, I realized that I hold my breath several times during the day. I suspect it's a misalignment of my nervous system or a trauma response. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. Yes, it sure can be. It can be that there is a misalignment of the nervous system, there dysregulation that is happening, and a trauma response. And that goes back to some of the things that I was discussing earlier, because you hold your breath when you are in your sympathetic. So if you have a rigid window of tolerance, like even just a tiny thing, like a notification on your phone can send you outside of your window of tolerance, and it activates your sympathetic. Now that can cause fight, that can cause flight, that can cause freeze. So holding your breath is a freeze. So you're holding your breath and you're tightening up and you're freezing just like a scared animal. And triggers that we experience, whether emotional or some kind of sensation in our environment, some kind of event or noise, can cause that. So what you can do, I think what Lisa says she's doing here is so perfect, that awareness to stop and to realize what's happening and to breathe. Taking a nice deep breath into the nose and then a nice extended exhale, maybe even pausing to hold at the top or the bottom. You might have heard of box breathing, which can be 4 breaths, 4 counts in, holding for 4 counts, 4 counts out, holding for 4 counts. Now you can change the number of that. You can do 5, 5, 5, 5. Doing box breathing can really help to support you, calming down your nervous system and taking you out of that pattern. So when you notice, oh my gosh, when I hear this specific noise from this specific app on my phone, that's activating my nervous system, you can repattern that by the next time you hear it. When you catch yourself holding your breath again, you can do a nice relaxing breath. You can also do things, what I teach my clients is to also signal safety. So you can tap like on your collarbone, you can tap on the palm of your hand. There's other pressure points where you can tap and you can tell yourself, I am safe, while also doing the box breathing. So you're signaling safety to yourself with your words, with your actions, and also with your breath. So I'm all about the triple whammy. So this is a really effective way to just repattern something. Currently, you have a stress response. Once you have that awareness, you can repattern it into a less reactive and more of a parasympathetic rest and digest response. And you can do that with your breath. And again, a very important thing for most of us, especially when it's a trauma response, and that can be big T, little t, is to signal safety. Safety is your basic human need. We need to feel safe. And in this world, we mostly don't feel safe. We're living in fear. And that's all the reasons for that. Signaling safety to yourself is incredibly important, and saying, you are safe. You are safe. You can also say, I am safe, but you are safe. Saying it in the third person can sometimes be more powerful. Our final question that was submitted: how do I get the most out of breath work with fears of what releasing may look like for me? Okay, this is such a great question, and I saved it for last so that you could hear everything that I have already shared about breath work and how we move in the sympathetic and how we can actually activate our parasympathetic, our rest and digest. By using the breath, we can actually activate both. But a lot of the goal of breath work is to help us to get more often into the parasympathetic. However, when we are doing breath work for release, when we are doing breath work to help ourselves to shift our state, we might intentionally use a breath that activates and tosses us out of our window of tolerance and into the sympathetic. We do this intentionally with a guide, with a breathwork facilitator who is trained in this methodology, who can hold you in a safe space. We intentionally do that because it can help you to have an emotional release that you might need. A lot of times we hold ourselves back from crying. We might hold ourselves back from punching or kicking, and really our legs or arms might want to punch or kick. And so then you've held a memory of, it's not safe for me to punch or to kick or to scream. And so sometimes we will activate and then we will allow you that release. Again, held in a nice, safe environment in order to do that. And there's lots of opinions and beliefs over whether or not this is supportive. I know a lot of breath workers will really take this to the extreme. I'm a little bit on the conservative side, where I'm just, safety is so important in my opinion, that it's always like only do the amount that feels really good to you. So when you say, how do I get the most of it when I have so much fear? You're always getting the most of it. You're always getting exactly what you need in every breathwork session. You don't have to have some major, huge release every single time or ever in order to get exactly what you need from a breathwork session. Sometimes what you need is simply to lay there and breathe and allow your parasympathetic to get activated and allow yourself to feel the ground beneath your body, the ground beneath your feet, to allow yourself to be held and supported and just enjoy an hour of breath, of being with yourself, of being with your emotions. Sometimes that's enough. And other times and other people, it might be incredibly supportive to allow yourself to go into a little bit of a stress response and to take yourself over the edge and allow yourself to cry, because tears, it releases some beautiful drugs into your body that can be really supportive to you and help you to release maybe a memory that, crying, again, actually going through that physical sensation of crying with the physical sensations that are coming up in your body. You can go back to a memory. You can go back to a thought, can help to reveal a pattern to you that you might not have seen before. So it can be supportive to allow yourself to go into that fear state, but you don't have to. It's always titrating, once again, taking little sips to bring yourself into the present and what's here with you, allowing yourself maybe to go back to some memories, allowing a memory to pop in as a muscle might twitch. It's really the wildest thing. You can suddenly have memories released. I've had clients who have had smells from a memory. Actually, they are smelling in the here and now a smell from the environment, like the smell of the pine needles when they fell down and scraped their knee or tripped and broke their arm. The rush of the water that they were hearing in that moment, all of a sudden they're hearing it again as the muscle in their body twitches as they're bringing the breath into it and allowing themselves to feel that emotion. So it's really fascinating stuff. And there is research, of course, being done on it, and more research being done on this kind of trauma release that can happen. I just always say, ensure that you are doing this kind of thing in the safety of being held in a space by someone else, or just ensuring that you have safety for yourself. Of course, any of the breath work that we do on this podcast is always going to tend to be pretty gentle. However, I mean, even if you did the breath work at the very beginning of this episode, it's really not intensity or length that can have an emotional release. You could simply have an emotional release sometimes by giving yourself 2 minutes, 30 seconds of breath, because maybe you've been ignoring a feeling that has been overwhelming your body. You've maybe been stuffing something down. By simply allowing yourself to be present and to breathe, sometimes it will start to come up, and maybe you feel safe enough in that moment. You've activated that parasympathetic, your rest and digest is open. And so you feel safe enough to allow something to maybe come through, like a tear, or maybe just a thought or a feeling that you previously were stuffing down. So I hope that this episode and all of these questions, thank you, first of all, so much to all of the amazing individuals who submitted your questions for this episode. I'd be so thrilled to do further Q&A episodes. I am so happy to dig into the research and really dive in if you're genuinely curious more and more about breath work. On Thursday, I'm going to thread out a little bit as well, and we'll do some breath together as well so that we can dig more and more into this. It really is an incredibly powerful modality. And in episodes that are coming up, I also interview other people who believe in different practices or use other modalities. I myself have used so many, from energy healing, like Reiki. And there's also the energetics of breath work that we haven't even gotten into yet, to hypnotherapy and neurolinguistic programming. I love interviewing people and just talking about all of these different methods, and also, talk therapy too, because all of these modalities have a place for every person, depending where you are at on your journey and your unique experiences. Like, what is working for you? Maybe breath work is really a powerful tool for you. And I personally believe we could all be being more mindful of our breath, because really start paying attention to how much you hold your breath. It's a lot more than sometimes we realize. And there's some studies that have been done on the workplace. I read one that a friend had sent me last week where they're studying, like, when people are answering emails, when they receive an email, they tend to hold their breath. Like, we go into a stress response state when we receive the email, and then also as we're sitting there trying to craft the email. And if you can help yourself to be conscious of your breath and to come back into the rest and digest while you write the email, it can really help your nervous system to move out of dysregulation and back into your window of tolerance. So after all of that information, I hope you take just a nice, deep breath. And I would love for you to join me for a breathwork session sometime. Just FYI that I am working on developing a breathwork membership that is upcoming. I'm deeply looking forward to this. Currently, my breathwork offerings are with my current coaching cohort only, but I'm going to be opening it up and offering more times with breathwork where you can join on a regular basis, and we can work through some things that you might be facing. We'll be doing breathwork on a series of different topics, from self-belief to overcoming fear, to inviting love, to welcoming your own beautiful presence, to unleashing your gifts. So stay tuned for that. If you're really interested in being on the list to find out about it, make sure that you go to jenlist.com and sign up to get on my email list. When you do that, you'll also get my Joy Expansion Strategy. So be sure to get on that list, and I will let you know when it launches. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You just keep shining your magical unicorn light out there for all to see. I'll see you next time. Bye.